Welcome to NeuroVision, a regularly released podcast focusing on neurodiversity in the world of film, TV, and beyond. Hosted by Marc and Liz Goodbrand.
Hi, and welcome to NeuroVision. This is a regular podcast now with myself and Liz Goodbrand, where we discuss neurodiversity representation in film, TV, and beyond. So my name is Marc Crawley. I look after an organisation called Diversity, which focuses on neurodiversity. And yeah, like I mentioned, really pleased to co-host this with Liz.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Goodbrand. I'm late diagnosed ADHD, have some wonderful children who are neurodivergent, and I run The Good Space.
Fantastic. In typical ADHD fashion, I didn't mention that I was ADHD. So yeah, as well. So there you go. Absolutely. So just a bit of a reminder really of what the podcast is and what the podcast isn't. We will focus around neurodiversity in film and TV and I suppose pop culture really. We're not really looking to go into politics or anything too controversial. We have regular structure and segments as much as you can have regular structure and segments after your free podcasts, but we're looking to evolve, have guests, etc. as well. But Liz, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about Rain Man. Believe it or not, I had never watched it until we mentioned it a few weeks ago. So this was a new experience for me entirely.
I still struggle to believe it, that you've never seen it. Not even in the background or anything like that? Or
no, I think I recognised when I watched it, I recognised little clips from it. And I, more the music as well, I recognised the music at the end. It's just random. But no, never seen it before. But when I Googled, it is 1988 and I would have only been 6 years old then.
Do you know what? This is where our age difference shows a lot, isn't it? You know what I mean? I was like 14, 15 when it came out. So yeah, I can see. I see it at the cinema. Wow. Okay. So it's so interesting to obviously speak with someone else who knows so much around neuro-inclusivity and neurodiversity who's never seen it. Because a lot of the time, I'm sure I make reference to it in my training and things like that. But yeah, I do. More about the cliches in it and a few other things that we'll cover. But and I won't spoil it for anyone before we even start. But yeah. So what did you think?
So many things. I thought so many things. Before we get into the nitty gritty of that, though. There were a few observations I made at the start, which sent me down a complete rabbit hole. One, the wind farm. I didn't know that they existed in the 80s. So I did, the opening scene in California, there's this massive wind farm. So I went down a bit of a Google rabbit hole around when wind farms were first introduced and all the rest of it.
When did they come out?
So in California, kind of early to mid 80s, they pioneered it in terms of using it as a source of fueling homes. So that was something I learned. And also Tom Cruise, one of the opening scenes, he's got this brick of a phone. And I just think it's so hilarious that you're walking around basically with one of those enormous bricks that you could pick up while you were driving. That's a health and safety thing entirely, isn't it?
It's so true. Do you know what? I did observe in it when I was watching it with my wife again recently for this, how often he's on the phone. And I was saying that he's nearly always on landlines, apart from a couple of times when he's on, you're right, an absolute huge phone, isn't he? Which probably had about an hour and 10 minutes shelf life or battery life. But yeah, he would be on his mobile all the time now, wasn't he, in the film?
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of the film itself, I kind of had two reactions of a few emotions, but two reactions. So on one hand, clearly the film was groundbreaking. I mean, it grossed, I did some Googling on it, and it grossed something ridiculous at the box office. And it was the highest grossing film of 1988, won a load of Oscars and Oscar nominations and stuff. So it was clearly a very popular movie. And so with that popularity, did it kind of introduce autism to audiences that maybe had never come across it before? So could it have been seen as groundbreaking from that perspective? But then on the other hand, you can see how it shaped a very narrow idea of what autism is and what it looks like.
So you mentioned about some research then, Liz. So yeah, what type of things did you find out?
Yeah, so because obviously it came out in 1988 when I was a baby. Well, I was 6, so not really a baby, but a young'un. So I did a bit of Googling because I did some Googling on so many different levels. One, the character's profile of autism. So I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but a savant, is that how you say it?
Savant. Yes.
Savant, yeah. So, and that's only a really small representation of autism. So the fact that they chose to really niche down on a profile of autism, I was just intrigued where the inspiration had come from. So I did some Googling, and the writer of Rain Man, the writer called Morrow, he created the character of Raymond after meeting a real life savant. And so his characterization is based on this one person and his encounter with this one person. So that probably tells a lot about it, right?
Absolutely. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. I thought, and it's interesting about the mention of savant autism. So for years, and I've watched this film, as I say, probably about 10 times before I watched it again recently, I was always quite picky about the fact that it never mentions savant autism. It just talks about autism. But the doctor does mention it right at the start of the film, which I hadn't picked up on in all the times I've ever watched it previously. No. So I was always like, it's a misrepresentation of autism. It talks about, obviously, like you say, a relatively small percentage of people that have these incredibly in-depth strengths or traits. But I didn't realize that he does actually mention it. So I was maybe being a bit unfair.
Yeah, gosh. I missed that, but yeah, knowing what I know now, so I'd only done the research afterwards. I was like, all right, so that characterization is based on a real life experience, but with one person, and it sounds as though it may have just been one conversation or a few conversations with this one person, and then this whole profile was created and narrative.
Wow. So the whole narrative, the whole character, and pretty much, I suppose, the film is from that one meeting.
I don't know if it was one meeting. It doesn't say how many. So based on the character of meeting a real life savant, and the characterization was based on both of a good friend as well of him. So yeah,
incredible. And you mentioned as well about the Oscars. I think I did a bit of research as well, and I think it won like best film, best director, best actor, best original screenplay, which is crazy. It was, I mean, there's not many films that have won all of those type of awards, but also really commercially successful. Like you mentioned, the most successful film of 1988. I didn't know that. I knew it done well at the box office. Obviously, with Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise in it, you'd expect it to, but I didn't know it was the biggest grossing film.
Yeah, it apparently at the time it grossed about $400 million, and the budget was a $25 million budget. So it did very well.
Wow. And before, I suppose, we get into the nuances around autism and representation in the film, what did you think of it as a piece of entertainment?
Oh, that's a really good question. Would I watch it again? No. So that in itself is telling. I'm interested to know what kept you watching it, or what made you watch it as many times as you have.
I've got to be honest, I quite like Tom Cruise, right? And I think it was one of the first roles. So I'm talking about this from a non neuro-inclusive perspective here. I like the fact that it was one of his first serious roles. Before that, he'd done films obviously like Top Gun, and I think Cocktail, and a few other like sort of popcorn flicks, etc. And it was the first film where he sort of stretched his acting chops a little bit, if you like. And I just think it's quite an entertaining film. I like the brother relationship across the film as well. It's quite touching in places. I really like the music. I think the music is really good. I think the score is like an early and Hans Zimmer soundtrack, which I noticed, but also the actual soundtrack of the film is quite good. And I enjoyed the movie. There's certain parts of it that I found a little bit frustrating in watching it again, but on the whole, I think it was one of those films, talking honestly, again showing my age, that we had on video cassette, where we didn't have loads, you didn't have Netflix, etc. So I ended up just watching it a lot anyway, right? So I think it was much about lack of choice as opposed to anything else. But I was very familiar with it. But yeah, like you, I can't think really of a reason that I would watch it again now.
Yeah, I wonder, like you said, not having a lot of choice possibly growing up, and whether there was, I don't know, whether it was more around Tom Cruise and some of the other aspects, rather was it around the content itself, the subject matter?
No, it certainly wasn't. No, I didn't watch this film because I had a particular interest when I was 14 or 15 in autism. I think it was, from what I saw at the time and remember, it was quite a respectful representation, and quite a considerate representation. It's changed a little bit in my more recent viewing, but ultimately I think it was just one of those big films that a lot of people watched, a lot of people liked, and maybe you get caught up on the bandwagon a little bit. But yeah, I think from an entertainment perspective, I didn't mind it. I certainly, when we talked about Patience, I certainly enjoyed watching Patience more than I did watching Rain Man again recently, if we're looking at some level of comparison.
Yeah, same, absolutely the same. Yeah, I enjoyed how the brothers' relationship developed throughout the movie, although I still felt like Tom Cruise's character was taking advantage a little bit. I never felt like it was a very balanced relationship, but definitely grew from a place of resentment, which is where Cruise was initially, to more one of love, maybe, or love growing. And I did cry at the end. I don't know if it was triggered by the music as well, when they rested their head on each other, the foreheads. I cried.
Amazing. So I suppose one of the reasons we watched this again was well, two reasons really. It was a good retrospective look to see how autism has held up, but obviously you seeing it for the first time just adds this whole new sort of nuance to it, and as well. But what did you think about the representation of autism in the film, from obviously the type of perspective that we have working in this space day in, day out?
Yeah, I think when you tell one story or you depict one profile, unfortunately, you can end up sometimes creating assumptions, can't you, based on that one profile? And we know that it's diverse and it's rich and it's different for so many people. I mean, there were definitely some things I think the film got right, possibly executed on a more extreme level, based on kind of, I guess, it being a very niche profile that he had. But things like sensory overwhelm is something that's really quite common. And I think the need for routine and predictability, that was also came through strongly, and communication, and sometimes the communication gaps that exist between neurotypical and neurodivergent, and there's sometimes being a very literal interpretation of communication. I thought bits of that kind of held up for sure, but like we said, this particular character, Raymond's character, represents a very, very small proportion of the autistic population. Like, how many people with autism would describe themselves as a maths genius? As an example, it's very niche, isn't it?
It really is, and I think, like you said, I think on both sides of the representation, it was very, very extreme, and it was trying to hammer home those points. So you're quite right. The routine really stood out for me, and for example, the conversation that's often used in the trailers back when I was a kid about his underwear not being his because it was from somewhere from his brother, and he normally gets his underwear from Kmart, and then having to watch his TV program at a certain time, etc. Otherwise, he was in this instance likely to have an autistic meltdown, etc. So these were quite extreme. You're right, but then obviously they were quite keen, rightly or wrongly, to show the balance of strengths associated with that. And obviously these extreme savant level strengths that they show within this, and I'm sure we'll talk about those a bit more in a second. But I agree. I think, like any film, it may use extreme examples to try to paint this picture, particularly if you don't know a lot about autism. But I was quite surprised about I suppose some of the language that was used, a bit like Patience, where you'd had someone who maybe knew a little bit more about autism than maybe the average individual or the average filmmaker or TV show writer, etc. For example, they used identity first language. They used the term high functioning. They used autistic savant. They used quite a few different terms in there, and particularly when it was at Wellbrook, I think, or the place where he was staying. You could tell that there was someone there that had done a bit of research, or someone knew a little bit more around this subject, and it was quite subtle, but I picked up on it, and I certainly didn't pick up on it the other 10 times I watched it. So I thought that was quite interesting.
I think what makes it interesting is maybe that subtlety. If you're not looking out for it, would you have picked it up? Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I wouldn't have. Yeah. And certainly back in the day, when I think about my previous viewings of it, the key things that stand out for me were definitely the anxiety about the routine that's shown to the audience, and Tom Cruise represents quite a bit in trying to make sure that all of these adjustments are having to take place. And of course, the infamous Vegas scene. They're the ones that stood out the most for me when I was a kid, and even now, when I'm watching it, I was watching it this time, it was difficult to move away from knowing those type of scenes were coming up.
Yes. I think what's really interesting is you mentioned there about offering the strengths as well and sharing some of the strengths. So I had a conversation with my eldest yesterday, and we watched a little clip of Rayman, the bit where he was in the casino. And I said to so he's 11, soon to be 12. And I said to him, do you think this person's strengths are being taken advantage of in this particular situation? Like, what do you think of it? And my son just said, he's not being taken advantage of if he's also receiving the benefit from his strengths. So if he's getting something out of it too. And I thought that was a really cute, simplistic view of it. But if you think about what was happening in Rayman at that point in time, his strengths were absolutely being taken advantage of for the benefit of Tom Cruise.
Absolutely.
He wasn't giving any of that money back, was he? Or that wasn't the intention initially.
Absolutely, he wasn't. And for those who obviously haven't seen Rayman, we won't spoil everything for you, but there's a scene where both Raymond and Charlie, is that right? If I remember right, so Raymond and Charlie. So Raymond is Dustin Hoffman's character, and Charlie is Tom Cruise's character. They go to Vegas and they essentially count cards, playing blackjack. And you see an example with some toothpicks previously within the film, and with a phone book that shows Raymond's memory and memory capabilities, and Tom Cruise, I can't remember how he connects the dots, but he realizes that this could be used in Vegas to go and count cards. And I think at one point, I don't know if you picked up on it, Liz, the casino owner or the casino manager or whatever the name is, they said that there were 6 decks of cards in this particular form of blackjack. So having to memorize, what is that, 52 cards a deck across 6 decks, and knowing which cards have come through and have gone is incredible. Is incredible, to be honest.
It is. As we're talking about the casino scene, I'd love to share some of the discrepancy I picked up on with Raymond's character. So up until the casino scene, Raymond, his autistic profile was of somebody who had extreme sensory sensitivity, and yet he goes into a casino, possibly the most stimulating environment on the earth, the lights, the noise, the crowds. There was a lot of people around that table and no reaction at all. And I also noticed that he went and had his hair cut and hair washed. He had a new change of clothes as well. So he came out suited and booted, new shoes ahead of going into the casino. And that didn't offer or kind of disrupt in any shape or form. So my question is, was that plot convenience or was it something else?
So I've got a theory on that because you know what? And it's really interesting you brought all this up, and this wasn't pre-planned, but that whole section is the first time that Charlie, who's Tom Cruise's character, of course, I think embraces Raymond's autism and embraces his neurotype. And I think that feels quite good. So Raymond almost parks a few of the concerns at that point because he can see how happy it's making his brother. And then that's later on in the film when they have that last connection, he can tell how important that relationship has become to him. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you though. It's a bit jarring, and they don't say that's the reason, but that's how I'm filling in that inconsistency, I would say.
You're filling in the gap. But I love that. So almost like their rapport and relationship had developed to a point where Charlie almost existed or operated as a bit of scaffolding and safety for Raymond.
He felt safe with him.
Yeah. I think that's been very generous of you, Marc.
This is it. I know. We also have to take the opposite position as well. It's but some other things that stood out for me outside of that was there was definitely the literal communication points that was used quite a few times. Do you remember the don't walk scene where he was walking across the road?
And he just stops, doesn't he?
Because the sign changes to don't walk halfway through, so he doesn't walk. And then there's that. There's a few other things that are sort of used in there, of course, we mentioned around sensory and overload and etc. as well. I think at one point the person who's closest to him in the I suppose institution really where he lives has said he's never had any physical contact with him at all. So all of that comes in, which again I thought was quite nuanced, but quite again give a good indication of some of the challenges, although exaggerated, of what autistic individuals go through.
I definitely picked up on all of those things. I thought it was really interesting as well, the variation of contact as well, and how different forms of contact impacted Raymond, which of course is true to real life as well, isn't it? Sometimes it isn't just like one type of contact. So for instance, the scene with Charlie and Raymond when they were dancing. So they were dancing and then I guess Charlie became overcome with emotion and went into hug, which Raymond wasn't expecting. And that was a cross boundary.
Absolutely. And that almost, what's the word? It's almost like a safety mechanism that Raymond had around certain aspects and come through. And the other good example I thought was there's a lot of times when there was things you could tell he preferred not to do, but he sort of did because his brother was telling him to, or you could tell he didn't want to leave the institution, but he did. You can tell he didn't want to eat certain foods, but he did. But when it come to flying, you could tell he went into shutdown mode, as in, I'm absolutely not flying. And there was almost like a more extreme way of communicating in his own way to say, I'm not flying, which was quite interesting. Particularly, we talk to a lot of our community around autistic meltdowns and sometimes shutdown and that type of thing as well, which I thought, was however, again, quite a sort of an exaggerated depiction, but again, at least it brought it into the film.
Well, absolutely. Often, I mean, I explore a lot in coaching the mind-body connection and how powerful that is, particularly for neurodivergent people. And often we feel things physically, or there are signs physically that something isn't quite right for us, or experiencing friction before we can identify what that is. And sometimes it's really hard for us to identify the emotion as well, that also comes up for us as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned about the sort of morality of the film, and it felt in some instances it felt a bit exploitive from Charlie's character with Raymond.
Yeah.
Did you mean as in even at the end when he walked away from money, for example, as well? Do you think it sort of almost resolved itself in the end, or do you think it was still a bit morally dubious throughout? Or what are your thoughts?
Ooh. I don't know, because a good 80% of the film was Charlie exploiting, either first of all for the inheritance, or second when he discovered Raymond's gift and using that to win lots of money gambling. And so I don't know. Was it that at the end Raymond, he wasn't able to make the decision or identify what would be best for him, because he was given the choice of both options and he said yes to both options, didn't he? Going back,
Yes.
or staying with Charlie. And was it that Charlie then kind of reconciled? I don't know. What do you think the turning point was in that relationship? Because, I mean, the reason I'm saying this and I can't quite answer is it seemed to be a really rapid evolution of his character towards the end, rather than it being evenly paced.
Yeah, and I think this is where the film got a little bit convenient for me in watching it again, because again, we won't spoil it for everyone, but Charlie owes a lot of money, right? And he has this inheritance which doesn't come about for a variety of reasons. Finds out that Raymond's his brother, who's inherited the money he was supposed to get, etc. So that the whole film is about him trying to leverage some inheritance. But there's the scene in Vegas. He gets enough money, it looks like, to pay off his debts, right? So at that point, that financial pressure isn't there. But it almost felt from that point onwards, he started to be a little bit more compassionate towards Raymond's situation and far more open to him getting what he needs. And at one point, Charlie's given a financial offer, isn't he, to sort of relinquish responsibility of Raymond again, and he turns it down. But would have he turned it down if he hadn't won the 80 grand in Vegas by exploiting his brother? I don't know. So I think that's where it got a little bit too convenient for me in terms of tying up all of the film's loose ends.
Yeah, I agree on that front. Well, whilst you could see Charlie making some adjustments as he got to know Raymond, were those adjustments to help his cause or adjustments to really support Raymond?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's one thing I'm quite keen to get your take on, right? Because in my house, the appreciation of neurodiversity is incredibly high. Everyone's incredibly respectful. Everyone's very compassionate, etc. But we use a lot of humor around it. And in this film, there was a lot that did make me quite laugh, where Charlie was saying, you can hear me. I know you can hear me. Don't start this shit. When he's talking about his routines, etc. again. And I don't think he was being particularly malicious. And it's the sort of things that I hear my sons say to each other quite a bit. But I wondered how you thought the humor was handled in the film, because there was points where a lot of the time there was things that were meant to be quite funny, a bit where he breaks wind in the telephone box, all of these things. But wondered how you felt that was depicted.
Yeah, I thought that was done well, actually. Like you, I use humor a lot to help with my own neurodivergence, because I think life is so serious. Life is too serious. I think you've got to have fun with things, haven't you? You've got to just lighten it up a little bit. And like the same with my kids as well, both using humor. I think humor is a really great tool to support with resilience and stuff as well. Just like the humor kind of breaks things and then you're on to the next thing, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I, like you, I got quite emotional at the end when there's obviously not a lot of certainly emotional physical contact, but where Raymond leans in and he touches heads with Charlie. It's his way of obviously saying how much that relationship's meant to them. So very, very touching. It really is. So I suppose final thoughts really on Liz. How would you sort of summarize your Rain Man experience? In yeah, obviously for someone who'd never seen it before, how would you sort of close out on that?
How would I close out? I would say a good watch. Definitely a good watch. Some good, interesting takeaways for sure, but isn't something that I would be watching again anytime soon.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think
What was
I think from my side, it's like a lot of films that I watch now through maybe rose tinted glasses.
Yeah.
It wasn't as well made as I remember. It was okay. It was good. It was reasonably entertaining. The depiction of autism was probably a little bit more nuanced and better than I was expecting. Still a lot of cliches in there, and it's still a bit dated in certain areas. And I thought, in terms of performances from the two lead actors, I thought they were pretty good, right?
Yeah,
I thought Dustin Hoffman's depiction was good. Obviously, it's so individual, autism, so it's hard to criticize it as a generalization of a performance, because I thought for what he was trying to represent, I thought he did quite well. And I always think Tom Cruise's performance in that film is really underrated because it was one of his first serious role. So yeah, again, I've probably got no rush to watch it again. And I think if we're looking at a representation of neurodiversity or neuroinclusion, out of the two we've watched so far, I think Patience was a lot better.
yes, much better, much better. But I imagine when representation was limited at the time, this would have given it an introduction to something that some people would never have come across. So I imagine there's that balance, isn't there, between pigeonholing and creating one kind of experience and one assumption and holding that up as a neurotype or the full experience, and also it's a bit like the Barbie debate, isn't it, really?
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. And you're right, back in 1988, obviously a long time ago now, right? It was you're right, it was very, very different. But even now, I think my dad mentions it quite regularly. Have you taken Tom to Vegas yet, etc.? He still leans on these Vegas counting cards cliches. I'm like, Daddy's rubbish at maths, honestly. if he could do that, I would have taken him a long time ago. No, not really. So okay, so for me, it's a middling thumb, I think, to be honest. I don't know about you, but
yeah, what would we say on a score of 5? I think you're right. The acting was brilliant, actually, particularly by Dustin Hoffman. I know that he was working to a script and being directed, but he gave a lot to the performance, didn't he? So that in itself is good to watch, like talented people doing their stuff. So yeah, but I think overall, in terms of representation, maybe a 2 out of 5, I'd give it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that sounds, I'd agree.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
And an entertainment perspective?
Entertainment perspective. I'm sorry, I don't have the nostalgia that you have, or the love of Tom Cruise that you clearly have. So I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 again.
Wow. No, okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I'd probably go 2 on representation, 3 on entertainment.
3 on entertainment. Was it Tom Cruise that bumped it up for you? Be honest.
It's probably those rose tinted glasses that have bumped it up for me. Nothing else.
Just quickly, what is Tom Cruise, in your opinion? What is Tom Cruise's best ever movie? What movie? Yeah, best ever performance. Oh no, sorry, the two are different. Best ever performance versus best movie. The two don't have to be the same.
Yeah, you're right. The best ever performance is, I think he does quite a relatively small role in a film called Magnolia, which from Paul Thomas Anderson, and I think he was nominated for best supporting actor in it. That's his best performance. His best film, I could watch Top Gun Maverick like on loop. I really could. So yeah, well, what about you? Do you have an opinion on Tom Cruise's films?
I remember a couple of years ago being shamed by someone in my team at the time for referencing Tom Cruise and my I wouldn't say love of Tom Cruise, but my appreciation of Tom Cruise. And this was by a 20 something person who was like, Tom Cruise? Who's Tom Cruise? Like, no.
Tom Cruise was?
No, not really. There was
Come
a period of
on.
time though where he wasn't really in very much, was he? Like, he was very big, obviously, 80s, 90s, noughties. And then I feel like it went a little bit quiet, maybe with the whole jumping on the sofa, Oprah Winfrey situation. It did seem to go a little bit quiet.
Wow, I can't believe there's human beings on this planet who have an interest in film who don't know who Tom Cruise is.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I listen, I like him. I'm not, I don't want to come across that I was a massive Tom Cruise fanboy, right? But I enjoyed his role in that film. But yeah, but it's, I can't believe that. Even the new generation.
I watched, it was a Cocktail for the first time last year. And this year, what's the name of the movie where he's under a lot of pressure by his parents and his parents go away and he gets into quite a lot of trouble? I don't know if I should. Yes, I watched that for the first time a couple of weeks ago. I'd never seen it before.
This Tom Cruise 80s back catalogue at the moment.
Yeah. I did that, and I watched loads of Marilyn Monroe movies as well that I haven't seen before. I just started to venture into some old movies.
Love it. Well, I love the way that we've gone left field on this one, into Tom Cruise and Tom Cruise movies. So that was. Do you know what? I'm really glad we've looked at it through a retrospective lens, and I think it was quite nice that we had a reasonably similar perspective on it, which was good. So our regular segment now, as I mentioned already, as for the third time, is it my neurodiversity or is it just me? And Liz, honestly, I absolutely pissed myself when I got a voice note or about this from you earlier in the week. so yeah, I can't wait you to share this one, because I told my wife about this as well, and she's so in your camp with this.
Is she? I love it. Okay, so my thing is cues, and not any type of cue. It's a very particular cue. So I'm cueing to be served, likely in a cafe. I've got a cafe in mind at the moment because it's where I really experience this trigger. So I'm either waiting in a coffee shop or in a cafe, some sort of food, drink service place. And if I'm queuing for a long period of time and I spot inefficiencies, it triggers the hell out of me to the point where I am stood there and I find myself getting more and more wound up, and I am calculating and kind of creating all these efficiencies and shortcuts that they should be doing behind the scenes. How they should be cutting the cake, how they should be kind of putting the coffee through the coffee machine and also multitasking and doing something else. How they need to have more than one till, and how they need to have one person serving this bit and one person operating a different part of the production line. So I have it all figured out for them by the time I'm served.
Honestly, so the question, just as a reminder, is this my neurodiversity or is this just annoying? Is that right? That's the question we're asking now.
Yeah, and I think the bit around the neurodivergence isn't the fact of being annoyed by a cue, because let's face it, none of us really enjoy queuing. Like, that's frustrating in enough. But for me, the frustration manifests itself into wanting to improve their system and standing there and in my head mentally working out what they need to do to shift this queue quicker and to serve people quicker.
Do you know what? For me, this is definitely a neurodiversity thing, right? Because I can imagine if you're ADHD, you're looking at this and you're picking up on all of this information really, really quickly. You're solving the issue. You're looking at a bigger picture. You're looking at, they could do this, they could do that. And for example, if you're autistic, you're looking at it in quite a logical way, potentially, and you're looking at the mechanics around this and you're thinking you could do this more efficiently. Either way, I think the way that you're looking to try and improve this the process is to make this fucking queue go quicker. I love it. I love it. For me, that's definitely an ND thing, to look at the queuing experience and what you can do to make it quicker, and literally dissecting this poor person's job behind the counter. Definitely ND.
And what they should be doing, according to me and the opportunity and possibility that I see.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I know. It does. It's really funny because you see other people just on their phones, and I'm just there silently observing and watching and calculating. And
and have you ever said anything to anyone in this? Have you ever said that you should look? Why don't you put the sandwich on at the same time as you're making the coffee, or something like that?
Could you imagine? No, I think that maybe by the point of being served, I've maybe exhausted myself by all these different parameters and things that I'm exploring for them to do. But I ought to, really, because I go back to this same, it's a really cute little coffee shop in a local garden centre. So I'm there supporting a local business. And I'm just like, oh, this happens every time I'm here. So maybe I ought to give them my feedback.
Yeah, it may be. I suppose in the right time and the right context, it's really cut. But yeah,
not after every 10 minutes.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think this is an ND thing to look at a queue in this way?
Yes, I think I think it is, because you see you see other people that are just frustrated, or some people that and I would so love to be this type of person that are just really chilled about it. You know, they've got all the time in the world. They're just going to stand, just look around and just queue for as long as it takes to get their coffee, and they're not bothered. And I tell myself to be that person in the queue, but I wind myself up, just like, patience, Liz, patience, just
Love it. I love
wait
it.
It will happen.
I love it. And my wife is exactly the same as you, by the way. And when that's what made me laugh, because for me, I use that time to just doom scroll or look at the spool or pay a bill I haven't paid or something like that. But yeah, it was so funny when I got that voice note through. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening today. I think I was really excited about doing this one, to look at Rayman through this perspective. And Liz, you come up with such a great idea for the first episode that's quite topical to when we're obviously recording this, which is around March 2026, of reviewing the film I Swear.
Yes. And actually, we thought about doing that before recent events happened, actually, at the BAFTAs, but I think even more topical now to explore it.
Definitely. Really excited about that. I've not seen it yet either, and it comes out on Netflix pretty soon. So it'd be great to watch it, great to get some observations around it and see what we think as well, and particularly with some of the fallout as well. But we really appreciate, obviously, all the support and everyone's that is listening to these podcasts. And we would love your ideas, of course, and you can make comments on any of the platforms where you're listening to this. And we're keen to try and continue expanding it. Yeah, are you enjoying it, Liz?
Yeah, I love it. I love these just open conversations, talking about difference, celebrating difference. Yeah, I love these kind of conversations. So to echo what Marc said, if anyone has any suggestions, or if anyone has any feedback or questions, or if you would like to take the mic and join us on one of our chats, then as Marc said, you can message on any one of the channels where we're posting our podcast, but also we have an email address, which is hello.neurovision@gmail.com. So you can email us with anything whatsoever. Actually, I should reframe that. Don't email us with anything whatsoever. Email us with things relevant to the podcast, please.
Exactly. Maybe just rip apart the way we're doing it operationally and give us the feedback.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, thank you. So lovely to spend this time again with you, Liz, on this. And yeah, we look forward to seeing everyone and sharing our thoughts on I Swear on the next episode.
Amazing. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, then feel free to follow and hit the notification bell.